Hello everyone, I am Maria and this is Pictus channel. In this video I will tell you about the helmets of Etruscans, accompanied with some hand-drawn illustrations. We would start with the Negao type helmet. I found several rare articles, so I dare to say that this information may be new to you. Greek models used by Etruscans and the Montefortino type helmet we will discuss in the next video. And here is our plan for today. Evolution of Etruscan helmets from the dome shape to the Negao type, typology and why some researchers consider the term Negao is not entirely accurate. Then we will analyze the construction features, and there was a reason for every element here. Briefly about the process of manufacturing a helmet, and finally I will tell you about two inscriptions. One places this helmet in a historical context of Etruria, and the other may be the earliest known inscription in the Germanic language, and possibly even written with the Proto-Runic signs. And for illustration I use references, so no worries about the accuracy of depicting real historical objects. In the work of Renato Ridella, which will be the main source for today, I found a wonderful diagram of the evolution of the dome-shaped helmets of the Etruscans. The Negao type helmet will be the final result of the evolution. This is perhaps the only form of helmet with Italian origin, while others, such as Italo-Chalcidian or Pylos, were borrowed from Greeks, and Montefortino and Culus from the Celts. And I want to say right away, I don't know Italian, and Renato Ridella's article is indeed in Italian, so I used online translation services, hence the terms may be inaccurate. But I will definitely provide the original term in Italian. In the 8th century BC, the most common helmet was a dome-shaped helmet of the well-known culture. It could also be called knobbed bell helmet. Throughout the 7th century, this type was gradually replaced by a bell helmet. It was a kind of a deep hemispherical head that flared out at the base, forming the continuous brims. It's very similar to these helmets that we discussed in one of the previous videos. The center for the production of such a bell helmet was area of Vitellonia, right here. Throughout the Trans-Apennine trade route, it reached the Adriatic coast, and in these regions, through which the trade route passed, appears its own variant of the helmet in imitation of the original version from Vitellonia, the helmet with composite dome. This helmet copied the form of the bell-shaped helmet, however, it consists of several parts, the helmet we talked about in the previous video. And as you can see, the local level of metalwork did not allow to manufacture exact replicas of the Etruscan helmet. The production of bell-shaped helmets stopped at the end of the 7th century BC. This happened at the time of Vitellonia's economical decline. The main reason for stopping this model was its poor design. The smooth transition between the dome of the helmet and the brims didn't fit the shape of the head. And the round shape also did not fit the ellipsoidal shape of the skull. This caused the overall instability of the helmet on the warrior's head. In response to these problems, an improved model appeared. The bell-shaped helmet with indented profile. This helmet featured a slight narrowing in the middle, ensuring a better fit to the head. The lateral dimension is reduced, bringing the helmet closer to the skull and enhancing its stability. The helmet's functionality improved further with a new transitional variant, a helmet with a rounded cap and neck at the base. In Italian, this accentuated narrow part is called neck, and I suppose that this word is pretty precise describing this particular element. These helmets still lack a vertical ridge or keel, but they do have a clear distinction between the dome and the neck. The dome of the helmet gradually transitions from the rounded shape to an oval one, and the helmet itself becomes more elongated. Compare the first and the second subtypes. This type strongly resembles the Cannae helmet from the previous video, despite the absence of the groove for the crest and the bumps on the sides. However, it is important to note that the region where both types were found is the same. The Cannae helmet was spread from the Ancona to Bari, and this type of helmet was found in these places. And here you may say, all these points are outside the Etruscan territories. And it's true. Not a single instance of this type of helmet have been found in the territory of Etruria itself, despite its clearly Etruscan origin. These two types of helmets fit very well between this helmet and the Negao helmets, for which there is archaeological evidence. But the question remains, how explain the absence of such specimens in Etruria? Ridella explains that a certain type of tomb in the Tyrrhenian region was easy to find and was often looted, both in ancient and modern times. At the same time, simple pit burials in the Middle Adriatic region, one of the main markets for Etruscan helmets, have better preserved archaeological evidence, including helmets of this type. And this shows us that we need to think about how well archaeological sites are preserved when we are trying to understand where ancient artifacts came from. And now let's take a look at the helmet with a vertical ridge, or helmet with keel. In the 5th century BC, it was the most typical helmet used in Etruria. The earliest example of this type of helmet that can be dated comes from the warrior's tomb at Vulci. They continued to be used without any change in the design until the 4th or possibly the 3rd century BC. In total, more than 200 helmets of this design have been found, and Vitellonia was one of the centers of its production. 120 helmets of similar design were found in the burials there. Talking about geographical distribution, helmets of this type have been found not only in Etruria, but also far beyond its borders. Along the Adriatic coast from the Apulia to Romagna, in northern Italy, and moreover, local variants of Negao helmets have been found in Slovenia, and a significant group of helmets have been found in Genoa. The finds also extend to southern France and Switzerland. These helmets are often referred to as Negao type helmet. The name was derived from the place of discovery near the village in Slovenia, now called Negova. But now I will call them helmets with keel, just as in the article, and to separate them from the Negao type helmets. The original Italian term you could see on the scheme. The keeled helmet has subtypes. Ridella distinguishes between types A and B. Other researchers distinguish between Vitellonian helmet and Volterranian helmet. Despite the consistency and apparent similarity in the design of the helmets from the period, the subtypes have a number of distinctive features. And here are some of the most notable ones. The helmet's neck and the dome have changed. In the early model, the proportions are similar to the previous models, but the pointed dome and keel appears. In the later helmet, the height of the dome increases, and its shape becomes even more pointed. The keel becomes more pronounced, while in the earlier model it is barely visible near the top. The neck height was reduced to 2.8 centimeters, and before it was 5 centimeters. And this was probably the lowest possible height for a good fit. The neck is more curved, and this improves the helmet's fit also. Type B is also different because of its decoration. Designs like ovals, teeth, spirals, circles, and squares are often repeated on the outer edge of the rim. Another important change was how inner padding was attached to the helmet. In Model B, there was a special flat ring inside the helmet along the bottom edge. It had small holes, and the padding was attached to them. This version of the helmet represents the final development of Etruscan helmets. It was produced for a longer time than the Type A, which indicates its effectiveness and popularity. Sometimes a third type are also distinguished, and what's different? The height. It is even taller and more pointed than the previous two. Now let's talk about the Negao helmet, and why some researchers think that it is wrong to call similar helmets found in Italy Negao helmets. The name Negao itself comes from the place of discovery in the Slovenian locality, which used to be called Negova. For a long time it was thought to be a separate type of helmet, but new research shows that this is not entirely true. In fact, the Negao helmet is the result of the evolution of Etruscans helmet and not the predecessor. The history of this helmet developed like this. First, the Etruscans created the models A and B. Through the trade, these helmets reached the Alpine region. Then, in the 4th century BC, the Celtic invasion interrupted the trade routes. That's when local craftsmen began making their own versions copying Etruscan designs. These local copies became what we called the Negao type. They are characterized by the absence of the vertical rim on the bottom edge, and the profile of the dome was even more conical. You notice that the further you go, the more pointed the helmet becomes. And given the tendency of the shape to change from rounded to pointed, it seems to me that this could be another argument in favor of the Negao being a further development of the Vitellonian helmet with keel. In general, it is important to realize that it is not accurate to call all helmets with keel dome and neck at the base a Negao type. The true Negao type is a local version of the Etruscan design. Interestingly, the production of Negao type helmets stopped in the 3rd century BC, when Celts came to Slovenia. They preferred other type of helmets, and we will talk about them in the next videos. There was also another interesting variation of the helmet with keel. It is called the Central Alpine variant, or the Aegis Gubersko type. The name comes from the area in Switzerland where such helmets were most often found. Unlike other helmets, which were made of one piece of metal, this one is made of two halves. The place where there used to be a keel has now turned into a real ridge. They were made from the late 2nd century BC to the late 1st century BC, and that's quite late if we're comparing it to the first versions of the Etruscan helmets with keel. And by the way, do you remember the composite helmet that was produced on the east coast of Apennines in imitation of Etruscan helmet? It is believed that in that case, local craftsmen lacked the technical skills to make one-piece helmet. And I wonder if that was the same reason here with Aegis Gubersko, or it was something else. As you can see, the helmet, which was invented by the Etruscans back in the 6th century, survived for such a long time. It seems that the idea of the helmet with keel and neck at the base was quite effective. We have done with history and typology, and let's talk more about the design of the helmet. So, as you have already seen, in despite of some variation in sizes and variants of decorations, such helmets retain a significant constructive consistency. We can distinguish three features: the presence of a kind of a keel along the helmet, the neck, narrowed part at the bottom, and a special shape of the lower edge of the helmet. Let's examine these 3 points in detail. The keel forming the top of the dome was probably designed to reduce the vulnerability of the top of the helmet to frontal blows. Since increasing the thickness of the bronze plate was not possible due to weight considerations, makers left to work on the side slopes of the helmet to help deflect blows. This is confirmed by the fact that the keeled edge is more pronounced in the front and upper parts, which are more exposed to attack, while it's disappeared completely in the lower region of the helmet and at the back. The second key element of the helmet is the neck, the inward curve of the metal around the circumference of the dome base. It centers the helmet on the head, preventing the displacement during the sudden movements or blows, and creates space for a protective inner lining. A similar solution is found in Greek Corinthian and Chalcidian helmets. There is also a clearly visible curve separating the lower part of the helmet, including neck protection and fixed cheek pads, from the dome of the helmet. It is important to note that this design feature developed in parallel and independently in both the Greek and Etruscan Italian region. This indicates that the different cultures found similar solutions to the same technical problems in helmet design. The third element is a changed shape of the bottom edge. If you look at the predecessors of this helmet, they all have a horizontal bottom edge. Our helmet had an additional vertically positioned rim. It is written that it makes the construction more rigid. To the inner side of the bottom of the helmet was also attached a flat bronze ring with the holes for attaching the lining. The helmets of this type could also be used with a crest. There was a special attachment on the top of the helmet for this purpose. The crest usually ran lengthwise. However, there are few examples of the helmets with a crest placed across. It is believed that this type of helmet had no cheek guards. There is only one specimen with the cheek guards, but the shape, construction and patina suggest that the cheek pads were not original Etruscan and were added later. This helmet is now kept in Louvre. Renato Ridella also describes the process of making the helmet. I will try to translate it for you. And please don't be angry to the inaccuracy of the terms, I'm translating from the Italian. The helmet was made by cold forging a bronze alloy with a low tin content. The process also includes the necessary heating of the product to restore the plasticity of the metal. It started with a sheet of bronze which was first forged on a flat anvil and then molded on a stake with a rounded head, gradually giving it concave shape. Then, using a stake, the master formed a bend in the neck area and, as a consequence, created a side bend for the rim, which was then flattened with a hammer on a horizontal surface. And then it was already bent to a certain height in the opposite direction on the edge of the anvil. And the final shaping of the keel in the upper part of the helmet was done on the stake. The main process was followed by finishing operations. This includes removal of hammer marks with abrasive materials up to complete polishing of the surfaces. And at the final stage, prior to the installation of inner lining, the most valuable pieces were fitted with decorative elements and a crest attachment. And now, 2 stories about the helmet inscriptions. But first I want to ask you to do me a favor. Please give a like to this video, because this would help my channel to grow and encourage me to make more videos for you. Haspnas and private armies. One of the most intriguing finds related to the Vitulonian helmets is the discovery of the same helmet inscription, Haspnas, on at least 56 helmets found near the walls of Vitulonia. This inscription represents an Etruscan family name in genitive case. The presence of this inscription on so many helmets allows us to make several important conclusions. First, it indicates that the helmets belong to the members of the Haspna family. Second, such a number of identical helmets indicates the existence of a private army belonging to this family. Linguistic analysis of the inscription helped to date these helmets. Based on the morphology of the name and the shape of the helmets, a date no later than 450 BC was established. This find provides unique evidence for the military organization of Etruscan society. It shows that influential families could maintain their own armed units, which is consistent with the evidence of the private wars of the period. For example, ancient sources mention the war of Roman family of Fabii against the Etruscan city of Veii, which may serve as a parallel to the situation with the helmets of the Haspna family. Though the helmet inscription Haspnas on the helmets not only helps to date the find, but it also allows us to incorporate the archaeological finds in a historical context. Harigast. This helmet found in Slovenia has an inscription which may be one of the oldest pieces of evidence for the existence of the Germanic language. Some scholars even speculate that it may be the earliest version of an alphabet that later developed into runes, although this interpretation remains controversial. Here is what the inscription itself looks like. The alphabet thus resembles the runic alphabet. It should be read from right to left. In addition, all letters are mirrored. Let's mirror it back for our convenience. Harigasti Teiva. What does this inscription mean? According to linguistic analysis, there are 2 words. The first is a Germanic name, Harigasti or Harigastis, which consists also of 2 parts. Hari presumably means an army. Similar words are also found in Old Norse, to make war or to rob, war, and in Germanic language we have Heer, army. Gasti means guest. So it turns out to be a military guest or something like this. Probably mercenary? Write your thoughts in the comments, please. The second part of inscription has to be interpreted as Teva, God. So, inscription said, Harigasti, priest of the god. If the analysis is correct, it is the earliest recorded Germanic inscription. It remains unclear, however, how the Germanic priest appeared among the local Celtic population, unless the helmet was captured as a trophy. Could this inscription be a runic or proto-runic alphabet? A wonderful analysis of this question is presented in Jackson Crawford's video, which I encourage you to watch. Shortly, the key point is to determine the nature of the alphabet used. Is it really proto-runes, or it is some similar alphabet? For example, it could be Alpine writing derived from the Etruscan alphabet. It is noteworthy that some of the symbols in the inscription have similarities to Greek letters. If it is confirmed that these are runes, this inscription will be the oldest known example of runic writing. Now the oldest is considered the inscription Haria, on a comb found in Denmark, known as Vimose comb. It dates back to 2nd-3rd centuries AD. Linguists define the language on the inscription as a Proto-Germanic or Proto-Norwegian. In the next video we would review Greek helmets of Etruscans and Montefartina and smoothly pass to the models which were used by Roman legionaries, culus and helmets of the times of empire. That's all for today, and see you in the next video.